Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. Time for another show. Time to admit that I don't know whether the microphone was on or off a minute ago as I am preparing for the show and humming in your ear, probably. Anyway, a little bit off today as we push high school boy out the door and hope that he makes it to his bus. They're changing the bus times again. And, gosh, well, you know, who knows? We'll see whether there's a knock on the door at some point later on and the entire show is disrupted. Well, we've got a whole week of disruptions to go. It is Tuesday. It's a good day for disruptions, and we'll do a disruption in the last segment when Joan McCarter calls in and saves us from the anxiety of casting about for more stories to fill that last hour. She's got plenty, and I hope all is a go for today because, you know, it's always nice. And especially nice if you don't have to talk about government shutdowns happening anytime soon. That'll wait for another 2 months or so before we have to start talking about that again. It's a nice reprieve. I will have gotten, well, I guess the campaign email comes to an end pretty soon. I guess there are some places that'll have runoffs, but I'm getting about 14 campaign emails an hour at this point. And I think that's either no exaggeration or only a very slight exaggeration. It's really happening. I will say there are some people out there with some active email programs. It may be working. It may not be working. I don't know with all of you. But there are some candidates that are literally emailing me multiple times in an hour, every hour. And they're not local either, so it's a little bit odd and it's a little off-putting. I do my part. And I don't know, but somewhere they must have gotten the idea that I'm a billionaire and I'm reluctant to participate in elections. But anyway, okay, that's that. Let's see. Oh, I saw a news story the other day that was semi-local that, and someone has reminded me of it too. Who sent me this thing yesterday? All right, I'll find it eventually. But someone sent word of local, for me, candidate, Republican candidate in Virginia's 10th district. The nominee is Hung Cao, who is a Vietnamese American, in case you're wondering about why I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about exactly with respect to the pronunciation. I don't know whether there's any oddities that I'm not aware of. At any rate, he was mentioned in the, what did we read a couple days ago? Dana Milbank story that we read of the, I guess, the craziest of the crazy, you know, the top 10 looniest people running. I don't think he really even makes the top 10 looniest, but I guess he did something that got him on the list. I can't recall exactly what it was. I think it was, oh yeah, that's right. He was involved in a, I don't know, debate discussion with somebody, give and take interview, I don't know, about guns and gun policy. And in defense of gun rights, he had made the claim that many more people get bludgeoned to death than are shot to death. Bludgeoned and stabbed to death than are shot to death. And so therefore, I don't know, it didn't even bother giving him the finishing of the quote. It was garbage. And I'm sure he was saying, well, then, you know, you're not going to ban bludgeons, are you? Well, we do. We ban bludgeoning. That's the important part. And the stabbing. But no, you're not going to, you know, ban knives. No. But what can I tell you? You're wrong about that fact. But that's what got him on the list. Anyway, it turns out now he's in the news again. Here it is. Adam McGinnis had sent me this one. There are several people taking note of this. He's got his team of volunteers out there knocking doors willy-nilly, which is, you know, not a terrible thing. It's not the worst mistake you can make in the world. But they are, well, for one thing, they are wasting their resources in some cases, as the big story was that he was knocking on doors in Woodbridge, Virginia, when somebody took note of the fact that Woodbridge, Virginia, any part of Woodbridge, Virginia. There's no part of Woodbridge, Virginia that is anywhere inside Virginia's 10th district, and it's not even really close. The tweets that Adam McGinnis forwarded on to me include, let's see, one with a map that shows where Woodbridge is relative to the 10th district. I mean, it's not a million miles away, but here's one that says forwarded from Aaron Fritchner, who says, if this photo op was staged in the closest part of Woodbridge to Virginia 10, it would still be 5+ miles outside the district that Hung Kao is running in. And it was including a link to one of Hung Kao's own congressional campaign tweets saying, here I am in Woodbridge, shaking hands, whatever. I don't know what his message is. But at any rate, it's a picture of him standing more than 6 feet away from people he's speaking to. Great door knocking in Woodbridge today. Thank you, 7 News DC, for a great interview. They came to interview him about his campaign and apparently never asked him at any point, why are you campaigning here in Woodbridge, Virginia, which is way outside of your district? I can tell you this, they're not operating off of a door knocking list with good or current data. If they were, they wouldn't have knocked on my door. They wouldn't have knocked. I saw a tweet the other day to the same effect on Julie Briskman's door. They would see that we're strong Democrats and no chance that we would be receptive to their pitch, but they knocked on the door anyway. I think which is fine. It's not the worst mistake in the world. The other one is far worse, wasting your time outside of the district. You never know. And if you've got the volunteers, hell, knock on every door. But no, it didn't work very well. I got a volunteer at my door. The pitch was interesting, if you care to know. It wasn't about bludgeoning or anything, which I think is a scary pitch to make when you're just knocking on people's door at random. But this person said, I think he's got tremendous support inside the Vietnamese American community, and they all want very badly to be a volunteer on his campaign, which is to be expected and is a good sign for him. It's exactly how it should be going, just in terms of excitement about the first Vietnamese American candidate, certainly around here for Congress, maybe ever. And so, I can understand that excitement. Anyway, the pitch was that this woman told me, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican. I guess they were trying to say they're an independent. I just don't think the United States should turn into China. And I found no areas of disagreement with this volunteer. I also don't think that the United States should turn into China. I'm not certain how it would be done. I don't know whether it's just an illusion, a magic trick, some sort of geophysical anomaly. But at any rate, I was forced to agree. And I didn't have to take the palm card, but I did because I thought, whatever. I'll be nice. I don't feel like yelling at some volunteer. All right. And what's the yell about? You say, okay, thank you for telling me what you think. And then, I don't even offer what I think. It doesn't matter. They don't care. I don't care to tell them. So there you go. Anyway, so it happened and it's out there and it's not predictive of anything in particular, but, I'm hoping that it means that the campaign is in disarray and they have no chance of winning, but you can't really make that leap. It's a close race as races go, I guess. I don't know. I haven't seen any polling, but Jennifer Wexton, who is my current incumbent Democratic Congresswoman, is in her first term. So, you're really talking about, among the most vulnerable Democrats that there are. Oh, and while I've been speaking to you, immediately before coming on the air, I clicked through just to get it off of my unread mail page here. Not that it makes any difference. I have 32,000 unread mails somehow. Literally 32,107 at the moment. But I'm trying to keep the most recent pages more or less clear so I can see when things come in. Just as the music was ending, I opened and closed. That's how I got here. Opened and closed an email from Val Demings. And there's another one since I began the show. I just wanted to let you know at what pace these are coming. 9 o'clock and 9:09, I got emails. And I'm not in Florida. But there is incredible news. she says. So that's good. You might want to open her latest email and find out what that incredible news is. I just want to get it out of the way at the moment. Best of luck to you. My best wishes sincerely for defeating Marco Rubio. No one deserves defeat more, except for probably every other Republican that's running. And I don't mean to say that he's last in line. It's a 500-way tie for first place. But I just wonder, just commiserating with you. It's campaign season. Give all the money you can, as many times as you can, no matter how annoying the emails are. Although I will say, I have noticed of late that somebody must have, given a talk or a TED talk or a tip or something, unless it's the same operation doing the whole thing. But somebody has been teaching them to embed photos in their emails, and in some cases, little video clips of people admonishing you about how this is the most important election ever and you have to give money. I've seen James Carville out there. I've seen, Martin Sheen did one, but all the candidates are putting the pictures in it, and I think that's probably a good idea, right? Be engaging, visually engaging, et cetera, et cetera. Although it's become kind of comical when you have 19,000 of them an hour to look through, and you open one and there's James Carville starts haranguing you in video, and then the next one is Martin Sheen is yelling at you, and then the next one, the candidates are yelling at you. And it's kind of comical to see it all catch on all at once that way. All right, let's see, other news to catch up on. Oh, I need to put aside and respond to the latest gun fail news. There have been some spectacular, terrible, that is to say, gun fail stories in the last couple of days. It's just that season, I guess, and I don't know if it really warrants a segment today or not, but hey, you never know. But it has been rather remarkable. And speaking of it, I guess, gun fail, because it so frequently happens among the police, I guess it reminds me of this too. I saw earlier today, and I recommend to your viewing that you take a look at this from the Tampa Bay papers, tampabay.com. What's the name of the Tampa Bay paper? Anybody know? Tampa Bay Times. They have this story, and it's really remarkable to look at the video that they have with it. It is the story of the ridiculous and, I don't know what, well, let's see, we've got to come up with some more words for it. It's absurd, it's oppressive, it's voter suppression in many ways as well. Ron DeSantis's ridiculous program of, enforcing voter registration laws and voter fraud laws against convicted felons who were told at the DMV in most cases that they were in fact eligible to vote, or as was the case in at least one of these videos, that he was at the DMV renewing his driver's license or getting a driver's license after serving his time and getting off of parole, and was asked by the person behind the desk, "Are you registered to vote?" And he said, "No, I don't think I can be registered to vote. I'm a convicted felon." And he said, "Now you can. In fact, just fill this out. And, if you're eligible, they'll check. If you're eligible, they'll send you a voter card. And if you're not eligible, they'll tell you you're not eligible and they won't send one. So what's the harm? Fill this out." So he filled it out. They sent the card. He voted. Now he's being arrested. Along with this follow-up story is video from police body cameras. And the headline here is, "Police cameras show confusion, anger over DeSantis's voter fraud arrests. Local police carrying out the arrests were patient, understanding, almost apologetic," which is a rare thing to see in widely publicized police body cam video, to be sure. Usually, of course, you're watching some ridiculous shooting or another, and just marveling at the fact that this could happen anywhere in the world, much less here in the United States, much less when they know they have body cams on, but that's a totally separate issue. Here, though, you get a rare glimpse of the police, being patient and understanding and almost apologetic. These cops are embarrassed and confused. They're as embarrassed and confused as the people being arrested. They're apologizing for having to make the arrest. They're telling them, "I don't understand this warrant. I've never seen any warrant like this before. I don't know what it's about. I don't know anything about it." And, which, they don't know, honestly, most of these cops don't know much about any of the warrants that they're serving. But it is interesting, and I don't know whether they got a briefing that morning of like, hey, let's keep it low key because these are going to be people who are, well, for one thing, they are convicted felons, and the reason that their voting rights wasn't restored is that either they were convicted of a violent crime or a sex offense or one of the, very few top, I guess, charges about which society worries the most for whatever reason. And so they haven't had their voting rights restored. So they're going to be confused, agitated, and these are people who think that they have kind of rehabilitated themselves and they're starting out new, straight lives, so much so that they've gone and registered and then voted. And you're there to tell them essentially that, they've been tricked into maybe going to jail again by being an upstanding citizen. So actually, the act of being an upstanding citizen is what's going to end up landing them in front of a judge again. And they're going to be angry and confused. And some of them might think that they're being set up by the state, which is what's happening. So try and, be careful. Don't escalate. There's no need to have guns out for this. Let's try and keep it calm and cool and collected. And they do. In the videos that I've seen, do a very good job doing that. That's great. But you can see it and hear it in the cops' voices. They're not sure that they should really be doing this. And they are apologetic. I don't understand this more. You're going to straighten it out with the judge. I'm sure they'll let you go. One of them tells them, this is ROR, which I assume means released on recognizance. This is how they expect this to play out. Because they tell this woman that they're arresting, we'll take you in, you'll be booked, you'll appear before the judge, and he's going to let you right back out. You'll be right back out later today, but we do have to do this. And it's really, I don't know, it's somehow even more disturbing when you see these things. I mean, clearly more disturbing than this would be if there were violent arrests and people were getting hurt over this stupid law. But this really illustrates, and I think this is the point of the Times' piece here. Lawrence Mower, I hope it's M-O-W-E-R, like it's spelled like lawnmower. He may say Mauer, I don't know, but he's done a real service here in publicizing this story and providing some really interesting video. It doesn't make any sense to play it. You really need to see it, see the people's reactions, and see the pain on their faces as they realize, I just can't win. I'm trying to do things right, and I'm set up again, and they're taking me in again. Now I'm back in the legal system. I'm just never getting out. I'm sure that they're not too worried about serving time for this voter fraud thing at the moment. I think they think they're going to get straight back out, but eventually, each of them will face considerable jail time because Ron DeSantis and other Republicans demagoguing everything to death, but particularly with this quote unquote voter fraud idea. It's just really disturbing. And so you should take a look at it. I recommend it to you. All right. Let's see other bigger stories, with, well, I was going to say wider implications, but really not. I think this is probably right up among them because it's what makes it such a insidious plan, is that this will not garner as much attention and anger and frustration and pushback as some of the other stories, but it's voter suppression nonetheless and deserves every ounce of everyone's energy. All right. Let's see. Big story of the day yesterday, reported by, everyone. I think I saw NBC News had a story. New York Times and Washington Post followed very quickly. I don't remember where David Farenthold is working currently anymore, so let's see. I'll click through both of these things to see who covered what for whom. Do I remember correctly that David Farenthold moved from the Washington Post to the New York Times? Yes. Okay. Farenthold is really one of the originals on stories like this, sort of tracing the money, Trump-wise and where it went. So he deserves some attention for this one. And he wrote side by side with Luke Broadwater, whose name comes up quite a bit, on this for the New York Times. But on the other hand, not to be neglected here, Carol Leonig, who also has done a fantastic job on a number of Trump stories, writing it at the Washington Post, I'm torn. Where do we go first? Let's do the Washington Post because most of this crime happened in Washington. Why not? So it's local crime blotter. Trump charged Secret Service, quote, exorbitant rates at his hotels, records show. And if this feels like it's not exactly news, that's because you and I have read this story before. We've known this for a long time, but now there are records to show this. And so we'll go through another round of this. That's fine with me. It's fine timing for the election and everything. He's out there doing rallies every day. We might as well remind everybody what kind of criminal he really is. Former President Donald Trump's company charged the Secret Service, it's a secret, as much as 5 times more than government rates for agents to stay overnight at Trump hotels while protecting him and his family, which really they shouldn't have bothered with, according to expense records newly obtained by Congress. I guess that's the news. Congress has obtained them. You and I obtained them the other day when we read the newspaper. The other year when we read the newspaper. But okay, we never obtained records the way these guys have done. The records show that in 40 cases, which is a lot, the Trump Organization billed the Secret Service far higher amounts than the approved government rate, in one case charging agents $1,185 a night to stay, by the way, where? At the Trump International Hotel in D.C., which is weird because that's Washington, D.C., and what's the point? Like, why do they need hotel rooms at all? And the answer, I guess, is someone must have been sleeping there. Who? Because Donald Trump's supposed to be sleeping at the White House if he's in D.C. Is it the kids? Do they not stay at the White House? I don't know what's going on. It doesn't matter. Sometimes they're out of towners and they're there temporarily on Washington, D.C. duty, and then the Trump administration steers them there. I don't know. At any rate, this happened all over the place and at multiple Trump properties. So it's not exactly, like I said, a surprise, but here it is laid out by congressional investigators. The new billing documents, according to a congressional committee's review, show that U.S. taxpayers paid the president's company at least $1.4 million for Secret Service agents' stays at Trump properties for his and his family's protection. The exorbitant rates charged to the Secret Service and agents' frequent stays at Trump-owned properties raised significant concerns about the former president's self-dealing, that's what it's called, and may have resulted in a taxpayer-funded windfall for former President Trump's struggling businesses. Representative Carolyn Maloney wrote to Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle. I remember Maloney was thrown into a primary with Jerry Nadler this time around. So I think this is the swan song for Maloney, who's done a pretty good job at the Government Oversight Committee. And I guess now the records get dumped at this point. The records contradict the repeated claim made by Eric Trump, the president's son and the Trump Organization's executive vice president, that the family's company often gave the Secret Service agents the hotel rooms, quote, at cost or sometimes free, providing steep discounts for the security team to stay at Trump properties. That, you may recall, was originally in the reporting that David Farenthold did, I believe. I think that was his get when he asked about that, and I think he knew immediately that it wasn't true, and it is proven not to be true, of course, along the way. Eric Trump disputed that the Trump Organization profited off Secret Service stays at his family's properties, but, you know, he's a liar and he's kind of dumb, so it could be some mix of dumbness and liarness that is driving this denial. Any services rendered to the United States Secret Service or other government agencies at Trump-owned properties were at their request and were either provided at cost, heavily discounted, or for free, he said in a statement. The company would have been substantially better off if hospitality services were sold to full-paying guests. However, the company did whatever it took to accommodate the agencies to ensure they were able to do their jobs at the highest levels. And here we understand what the highest levels means. The highest levels of billing. There's nothing at cost about a $1,100, almost $1,200 a night stay. Not at that dump. Anyway, While the documents do not cover all Secret Service expenses at Trump properties during his presidency and reflect only a fraction of those expenses since he left office, they offer a more detailed financial accounting than previously known of what taxpayers paid for Trump's frequent choice to stay at his properties. Trump visited his properties more than 500 times during his presidency. Maloney, chairwoman of the House Oversight and Reform Committee, obtained the records as part of her investigation into how Trump may have profited off his security agent's duty to follow him wherever he traveled. She wrote a letter Monday to Cheadle demanding a complete accounting of what taxpayers have paid and continue to pay the Trump Organization. Given the long-standing concerns surrounding the former president's conflict of interest and efforts to profit off the presidency, the committee has a strong interest in obtaining a complete accounting of the federal government spending at Trump properties, Maloney wrote, although honestly this letter should have gone out a little earlier, maybe. The committee continues to examine potential legislation to prevent presidential self-dealing and profiteering, as well as to curb conflicts of interest by ensuring that future presidents are prevented from exercising undue influence on Secret Service spending. They're a reaction to the attempt earlier to throw out, for instance, impeachments and other investigations that were going on by claiming that there was no legislative purpose behind them. All right. Well, at any rate, Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi, that's right, I think we had to call his name the other day, said the agency is aware of Maloney's request for a fuller account. That's good. They got the letter, I suppose. We received the letter. There, it says it right there. And we are reviewing it, and we aim to respond to the committee by their deadline. He said, while we don't comment on any protective operations, agents must be within arm's reach of their protectees 24 hours a day. I don't know if that's really true. Arm's reach. In 2019, Eric Trump said the Trump Organization was saving the Secret Service agents and taxpayers who paid the bill huge sums. Huge, in fact. But in fact, they were saving them nothing and charging them exorbitant rates. Surprise. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue reading about this story, and we might still have to take a look at the New York Times version, although perhaps we can skip around a little bit more. But a good reminder that Eric Trump in 2019 said, oh, no, we're saving the Secret Service money when in fact, as opposed to actually bilking them, which is happening. And remember that, from early on, from 2015 during the campaign on, part of Trump's big pitch was, I'm really, really rich, so I'm going to be able to save the government money. I'm going to stay in my hotels. So instead of when the president travels places, he stays in the presidential suite, the most expensive suite in the whole hotel, right? And they don't pick some garbage dumps, I'm not saying anything in particular, but they're not staying at Hilton's. They're too disgusting. They're staying at fine properties like the Trump Plaza Hotel, the Trump International Hotel, the Trump Subnational Hotel, the Trump Regional Hotel, the Trump State Hotel, whatever. But, he was going to save everybody money. I'm going to be able to stay in my own properties for free. So no bills to the government for me or the Secret Service agents and the other staffers who are staying there. You understand? I'm going to be saving the government money, which is fine. I don't need the money. I'm really, really rich. And then, of course, he does the opposite. Everybody kind of knew that was how that was supposed to work. or how it was really going to work. And, he delivered as not promised. But okay. Anyway, now it turns out that they inflated the bills as well, which, why wouldn't they? Because what's going to happen? There's going to be negative publicity years after he serves. Big whoop. Anyway, and even so, I'm glad the Congressional Committee is uncovering this. But again, at the end, he's now almost 2 years out of office. Carolyn Maloney on her way out. So, I don't know what they were waiting for. But at least we know now. All right, so where were we? Right, in 2019, Eric Trump said the same thing. That was a lie. Also, there's more. If my father travels, they stay at our properties free, he said. No, they don't. So everywhere that he goes, if he stays at one of his places, the government actually spends, meaning it saves a fortune. That's kind of funny. He already let it slip. If he stays at one of his places, the government actually spends. I mean, it saves a fortune, because if they were to go to a hotel across the street, they'd be charging them $500 a night, whereas, we charge them like $50. It's like $50, $1,100 more than that, but, it's similar in that they both have numbers in them. And there might even be a 5 in both figures. In 2020, Eric Trump reiterated that the Trump Organization was giving these public servants, and ultimately the taxpayers, discounted rates. We provide rooms at cost and could make far more money renting them to members or guests, he said. No, he couldn't. The reality was different, the records reveal. Womp womp. During Trump's presidency, Secret Service supervisors frequently asked for special waivers to let the agency pay far more than the government-approved nightly rate for a hotel in D.C., which is usually about $195 to $240. Instead, they paid the higher costs that the Trump Organization was charging. So, clearly a lie. In April of 2017, when Eric Trump and his wife Lara were staying at the Trump International Hotel in D.C., the president's company charged the Secret Service agents $1,160, more than 4 times the government rate at the time, the records show. Now, I understand that the Secret Service has to go with Eric and Lara Trump because that's what the president said. Normally, it's not always the case that the adult presidential kids get that kind of protection, but I guess it's not out of keeping. There certainly have been presidential protective details for the kids before, even when they were adults. But at any rate, I guess the bigger question is, what are Eric and Lara doing staying at the hotel? Their father's the president of the United States. There are many rooms at the White House. They don't want to stay in the Lincoln bedroom or anything or nothing like that. They can't find space for them to spend the night at the White House. So, all right. And I'm sure it's kind of a pain in the butt, actually. So maybe you do want to stay at the hotel. But even so, what happened to the $50 rooms for the Secret Service agents? Oh, it's actually $1,110 more than that? What do you know? Huge lie. In November of 2017, when Donald Trump Jr. stayed at the same hotel, because nobody wants him in their house, the government was charged $1,185 a night for his security detail staying overnight at the hotel to protect him from nobody. Almost 6 times the government rate, which varies based on time and location. Maloney stressed that the Secret Service continues to pay the Trump Organization, by the way, while protecting Trump since he left office, and she is concerned by reports of excessive fees the agency is charged for the former president's travels. Her committee obtained records that stretch over his 4-year presidency and continue from President Biden's inauguration to September of 2021. Maloney noted in her letter to the Secret Service director that records turned over to her committee do not include the agency's payments for a series of visits to Trump's private sex club at Perv-a-Lago, some visits to his property at Bedminster, New Jersey, and for stays at Trump properties outside the United States during frequent foreign travel by Trump and his family. So, he's a big liar and a cheater, and he's stealing money from taxpayers. Big deal, we already knew. Over at the New York Times, they reported this way: Trump hotels charged Secret Service exorbitant rates, House inquiry finds. Records obtained by the House Oversight Committee show the former president's properties charged more than $1.4 million to agents protecting him and his family. As I said, David Fahrenthold, one of the originals on this beat for the Washington Post and now the New York Times, stolen away by the New York Times, along with Luke Broadwater, who I don't know where they stole him from. Maybe he just started there. Maybe he's, I don't know. They grew him from seed. I don't think that there's anything else that they're likely to have reported that wasn't substantively covered in the Washington Post. But again, credit to David Fahrenthold for his past work on this. And I think it was him that dug out the quote from Eric Trump that everybody's using. All right, let's see. Anything I'm going to skim through and see. Oh, right, here we are. Previously, the highest rate of the Trump Organization was known to have charged the government for a hotel room was $650 per night for rooms at Trump's Pervalago Sex Club in Palm Beach, Florida. That's interesting. And then they said, maybe we could get away with almost double that rate. And they did. And it depends on what you mean by get away with. No one ever hears about it. That's failed. No one ever does anything about it. They've still succeeded in that sense. Okay, what else have we got here? While Mr. Trump was in office, his hotels were visited repeatedly by people seeking to influence his administration. They remind us in the Times piece, including foreign leaders, embassies, and telecom executives who needed the Justice Department's approval for a pending merger. Since Mr. Trump still owned his business, he could benefit directly from their patronage. In the past, Trump Organization representatives have said that they were billing the government at cost and they could have made more money renting rooms to other guests, but that ain't true either. In 2020, the Washington Post reported that the government had spent more than $2.5 million at Trump properties during his presidency. The payments came from multiple agencies and were largely prompted by Mr. Trump's travel. It's ironic in that they have to credit the Washington Post for having reported it in 2020, even though it was probably David Fahrenthold who reported it, and now he's reporting for the New York Times. But it was a work for hire, so the Washington Post gets the credit. That's fine. Reminder also of the things they got charged for. The State Department paid the Pervalago Club thousands of dollars for expenses related to Trump's summits with foreign leaders there, including charges for flowers, food, and even glasses of water. Never miss an opportunity. The White House paid Pervalago more than $1,000 to cover 54 alcoholic drinks consumed by Trump aides in a private bar, as first reported by ProPublica. You might remember that story. It goes on. And yeah, there's a little bit extra detail in the New York Times piece just for added color. But I think you get the gist of the idea. What will come of it? Yeah, right. Pretty much nothing, but it's news, so there it is. All right, let's see. Other things that are of interest. Let's see. There are so many different approaches to how we could fill our time today. Let's, I'll wander around and sample a couple of other things. This seems like an interesting note of late. Let me check the date on this and make sure we're up to speed. Yeah, all right. Current piece from what used to be Business Insider, but is now just Insider. None of your business, as you know. I'm going to keep that line, I think. But Laura Italiano, I wonder what her heritage is. Laura Italiano reports this story for Insider. No, get this pop-up out of my way. Trump's secret ugly breakup with Deutsche Bank is revealed in new allegations by the New York Attorney General. That's of interest. We've always wondered what happened with that Deutsche Bank situation after all. And here's what they've got. Well, let's see. A couple of bullet points offered, but they're usually covered in the text if you go ahead and read it. And so that's what we'll do. For the past 10 years, Deutsche Bank has been Donald Trump's banking bestie, loaning him more than $400 million as he developed a Miami golf resort, a tower in Chicago, and a luxury hotel in the heart of Washington, D.C., since dumped, right? But the two are now in the midst of an ugly shotgun divorce. I didn't even know there were such divorces, but okay. Shotgun divorce, according to revelations in a new court filing by New York's Attorney General, Letitia James, with Deutsche Bank holding the shotgun. Usually it's the other way around when there's robberies going on at the bank. But okay, how exciting for them. Since Trump left office last year, the Frankfurt-based international bank, which has lent Trump far more than any other financial institution, has been steadily enforcing a managed exit. That's a good term for it, as James's filing calls it, from a lucrative relationship with the former president stretching back to the 1990s. On the surface, the slow-motion split, which began 21 months ago, appears to be a breezy affair, with Trump easily zeroing out all but $45 million in Deutsche Bank debt in May. So, okay, he came up with and supposedly paid off, or convinced them to list as paid off, a substantial portion of their loans to him. By the way, I paid them back, Trump would brag on Fox News the night after James filed her massive September lawsuit, accusing the former president of inflating his net worth in financial documents by billions of dollars. The banks made a lot of money, Trump told host Sean Hannity. She's trying to defend banks that got paid off. Okay. Not really defend, but okay. But as with many protracted divorces, the split between Trump and his once favorite bank began with acrimony, in a behind-the-scenes crossfire of accusations, ultimatums, and shade-throwing. They're very hipster in the way they write this story over there at Insider. At one point, as an apparently distracted Trump struggled to remain in office, his lawyers ghosted the bank for 6 months, ignoring escalating demands for answers. Frustrated by Trump's silence, the bank threatened default. James's new court papers, including a newly unsealed email chain between the two sides, offer a glimpse into the tense back and forth behind the breakup. And a new section here entitled, "A Haircut Like No Other." That's not what you think. It's a little different, but it does involve Donald Trump. Deutsche Bank had long known that Trump exaggerated, James has said in previous filings. In fact, the bank routinely factored in these anticipated exaggerations, applying what the AG called a Trump, quote, haircut, or percentage reduction to whatever the former president swore on paper he was worth. But what the Attorney General began alleging in publicly filed court papers 2 summers ago were exaggerations that no Trump haircut could make pretty. And no Trump haircut can make anything pretty, I promise you. James was alleging Trump committed potential fraud in the very documents the bank used each year to decide how much to lend, what interest to set, and whether the loans remained in good standing. The Attorney General is currently investigating whether the Trump Organization and Donald J. Trump improperly inflated the value of Mr. Trump's assets on annual financial statements in order to secure loans and obtain economic and tax benefits, James revealed in an August 2020 court filing. 2 months would pass, and the 2020 presidential campaign would reach its final frenzy before Deutsche Bank, already cooperating with the AG's subpoenas, began asking questions. The bank broached its concerns in an October 29, 2020 letter to Donald Trump Jr., who, despite his admitted ignorance of accounting principles, and it's a link for this in case you were looking for the admission of ignorance, has been signing off on much of his father's allegedly fuzzy math since 2017. What on earth, Deutsche Bank wanted to know, was going on with this probe by James, the New York Attorney General, according to a letter unsealed by the AG on Thursday. Was it true, they asked Trump's namesake son, that these annual 20-odd page self-certified accountings of his father's personal net worth, so crucial to Deutsche Bank's decision-making, were frauds? And then here, an excerpt from Deutsche Bank's October 29th letter to 2020 to Trump raising these concerns. Some legalese here, but it's very clearly from an important and typeset letter. So, I don't know. Do we need to read it in 2020 when Deutsche Bank learned of, actually, I guess this is, the excerpt of the letter is in here, but this is actually an excerpt, it appears, from the Letitia James filings, the New York AG's filings, against Trump because it starts out with the designation of this being a managed exit and then gives a paragraph and then goes to the letter. So, Deutsche Bank managed exit, right? In 2020, when Deutsche Bank learned of alleged misrepresentations in the statements from an action by OAG, Office of the Attorney General, to enforce investigative subpoenas, it asked the Trump Organization a series of questions about those statements. The Trump Organization failed to respond. Specifically, on October 29th, 2020, Deutsche Bank wrote to Donald Trump, and then here comes the legalese. Here's the excerpt from the letter itself. Deutsche Bank Trust Company America, DBTCA, has recently become aware of certain public factual allegations concerning the accuracy of financial information and representation submitted to DBTCA in connection with, you get the idea. That's the kind of letter it was. And they make no answer whatsoever. Your prompt attention to these matters is appreciated, the bank's head of private wealth management, Greg Coast, K-H-O-S-T, like ghost, but spelled with a K instead of a G. But his first name is spelled with a G. So it, again, suggests where ghosting is coming from, I guess. Anyway, your prompt attention to these matters is appreciated, he politely told Donald Trump Jr. Deutsche Bank's letter sent 5 days before the election, and it's a busy time, admittedly. But remember, Donald Trump Jr. is supposed to be focused on this and not either governing or, for that matter, the campaign. And yet we all know that, nothing thrilled him more than participating in the campaign. So he paid no attention to this. And the letter sat around unanswered by anyone at the Trump Organization for more than a month. The back and forth released by James shows Trump himself was deep in the swamp of election denial by December 7th, 2020, Pearl Harbor Day, when his side finally responded. And instead of Donald Trump Jr., it was the Trump Organization's top lawyer, Alan Garten, who sent Deutsche Bank a less than thorough reply. The October 29th letter, quote, only recently came to our attention. We had not seen it before, Garten explained of his company's month-long silence. Our company greatly values its partnership with Deutsche Bank and certainly wishes to cooperate with DB, not DBTCA. Come on. With DB whenever possible, the top Trump org lawyer added. That said, we are unaware of anything that would require us to respond to an inquiry of this nature. If you are aware of any authority to the contrary, please let us know. He ended the letter, signing off with a cordial, we wish you a happy holiday season. Oh my God, war on Christmas. No one even calls that out. That's incredible. Anyway, in other words, happy holidays, but don't expect any presents from us. And I think he has a point there. I mean, this is Deutsche Bank says they read in the newspaper that the New York Attorney General is suing and says that there's a lot of fraud going on, and we want to know what's going on with this. Tell us. And the response is actually, I think, correct, even if it's not the nicest response in the world or the most helpful response. But I guess he's correct in pointing out we have no legal obligation to respond to your letter. I mean, if the Attorney General presses us and subpoenas us for, calls us in for a deposition, then we got to answer somehow, even if we lie. But if someone else writes and says, hey, I read about these allegations, what's up with them? I don't have to answer you about that. And that's true. They should probably have figured that out. Anyway, let's see. It's unknown if Trump himself was told of Deutsche Bank's concerns at this point. He certainly was otherwise occupied, firing off 16 election denial tweets on that same December day, according to the American Presidency Project, including one from 1:40 in the morning, reading, all caps, no way we lost this election. Next up, the section, Deutsche Bank drops the D-bomb. Let's see what kind of D-bomb that is. A week later, the exchange escalated. Deutsche Bank answered the Trump lawyer's email with one from a lawyer of its own. That wasn't how they started? Anyway, it was now lawyer versus lawyer. As you know, Donald J. Trump is required under the terms of his loan guarantees to provide annual financial statements to Deutsche Bank and to ensure that those statements, quote, are true and correct in all material respects. The bank's attorney, Gregory Candela, wrote, noting, or rather quoting from the guarantee agreement for the $170 million old post office loan. That would be the loan for the construction of his Washington, D.C. hotel. built in the historic old post office pavilion. Candela repeated Deutsche Bank's request for further information on the AG's fraud allegations. Then he upped the ante, saying the bank needs that information in order to decide whether an event of default may have occurred. Now he's entering into some territory where the Trump organization might feel like obligated to actually tell them something. They say, you're not legally obligated to tell us, but we are legally entitled to start, I guess, whatever the process would be to declare you in default on your loans if we don't get a satisfactory answer. We appreciate your prompt response to these matters, the bank's lawyer urged. Deutsche Bank had dropped, there it is, the D-bomb default. The bank was entitled to call in the loan if Trump had lied to get it. Thanks, Greg, Trump's lawyer responded in an email 2 days later. It's faster anyway. It was December 16th, 2020, a day when Trump tweeted 17 times about what he termed the, quote, fraudulent 2020 election. We are reviewing your email and hope to have a response in the next few days, Trump's lawyer said. And then nothing. That's the section title now. And then nothing. So, where's that response? Deutsche Bank's lawyer asked Trump's lawyer in an email sent on January 8th, 2021, 3 weeks and one capital siege later. Alan, he wrote in what would be the end of the exchange, I'm following up on the emails below. Will you please let me know when we can expect a response? Thank you. And then there was no response telling him when to expect a response. Among a still distracted Trump's tweets that day was one from 3:44 p.m. that read, to all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. As for Deutsche Bank's final request for a response, ultimately none was forthcoming, the AG's filing from Thursday said. As a result of the Trump organization's failure to respond, Deutsche Bank decided to exit its relationship with the company. The formal decision was made by 3 bank executives during a Skype call on the afternoon of May 27, 2021, another of James' filings reveals. It would take a year until May for Trump to retire most of his debt, as demanded. Flush with cash from the $375 million sale of his D.C. hotel, Trump paid off the old post office loan in full and refinanced the $125 million borrowed for his 2011 purchase of Trump National Doral, his Miami golf course, as Forbes' Dan Alexander first reported in July. Now, I guess you can see exactly how serious about all of this Deutsche Bank really is by refinancing it. Did they offer the refinancing or did he take it somewhere else? But Deutsche Bank's final vote to pull the plug on its 4-decade relationship with Trump took no time at all. I guess that suggests that the refinancing was done elsewhere, but why they don't say that, I don't know. The Skype call was over in 11 minutes and 8 seconds. Trump has repeatedly insisted that his business has committed no fraud and that the Attorney General is engaging in a political witch hunt. A Trump lawyer did not return a request for comment. A Deutsche Bank spokesman told Insider he could not comment on legal claims or on client accounts. The bank takes its legal obligations seriously, the spokesperson said, including appropriately responding to authorized investigations and proceedings, which is why they were ultimately forced, I guess, not really forced, but found themselves favoring cooperation with authorities. They could eventually be forced, but they didn't have to let it go that far. So, yeah, they would have disappointed Trump, I'm sure, at some point soon. That relationship was doomed from, I guess, the inception of the investigation. So, okay, there you go. But on the other hand, he's got a point, Trump does. Underneath that wig somewhere, his head comes to a point, and he did, in fact, pay back that loan. And if he refinanced the Doral project at Deutsche Bank, then obviously they're just, a bunch of whiners and complainers, more than anything else. It would undermine any of their claims. And what claims are left? The bank won't have any, so that's fine. And if Letitia James is getting banks paid back, no surprise for the New York Attorney General really there. It's not the chief job description for this, for that post, but People who get defrauded, even if they're banks are people, my friend. If they get paid back, well, then so much the better. All right, let's see. Coming up to our top of the hour break, and there are a number of very interesting stories still looming out there. Some of them are long reads, some of them less so. I'm trying to think about whether or not I want to use those now or save those or see if we can record them for the next absence that's coming up. All right, let's see. Couple more things that I can, here's a short-ish one that I can share. Steve Cohen, Congressman Steve Cohen of Tennessee, tweeting the other day an interesting note. As co-chair of the U.S. Helsinki Commission, I used that Nordic pronunciation of it, even though I'm not 100% sure it's correct. Ooh, yeah, that's right. We have some pronunciation news to share too. But as co-chair of the U.S. Helsinki Commission, look it up. It's a very interesting thing. And yeah, it's a like a committee of Congress. I think it's a joint committee that is House and Senate members. And it's like a weird thing that exists there, and we really pay almost no attention to it. I'll look it up over the break and give you a rundown of it. But the important news is this. As co-chair of this commission, I am proud to be the first member of the U.S. government to issue a formal bipartisan call for Russia to be stripped of its seat on the UN Security Council. Interesting. I mean, it really is a long time coming, and I don't know that this is going to go anywhere, but it's the kind of thing that everybody sort of said, well, if we're being serious about things and judging what they're doing in Ukraine seriously, they have no place on the UN Security Council. And it was always something of an open question here on the show, and I guess in diplomatic circles. Is Russia really entitled to have inherited the Soviet Union's seat, the permanent seat on the UN Security Council? And I could see why it went by with very little question. Just don't make waves. But and it certainly looked for all the world like Russia could remain a, significant world power, if not a second superpower necessarily. But why remind them of that? And if they were going to act as a normal sovereign entity, everything would be fine. But, well, they ultimately just were no longer doing that. So there you have it. And now I guess the important news is, okay, now somebody is actually saying aloud, yeah, we really should be stripping the Russians of their seat on the UN Security Council. We'll read a little bit more about that and what the Helsinki Commission is after this. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So let's see, shall we begin by reading the excerpt? Yeah, we'll read the excerpt of the letter, the document, the I don't know what, that Steve Cohen releases in his tweet here. Again, as co-chair of the U.S. Helsinki Commission, I am proud to be the first member of the U.S. government to issue a formal bipartisan call for Russia to be stripped of its seat on the UN Security Council. The excerpt reading, we urge you, and we'll talk about who we are, we urge you to initiate a process to replace Russia on the UN Security Council as the fifth permanent member. Representatives Steve Cohen and Joe Wilson, you remember him? You lie. A co-chair and ranking member on the Helsinki Commission, respectively, wrote to Blinken, Secretary of State, on Wednesday, Russia is not a responsible international actor and is unbecoming of a seat on the UN Security Council. Moreover, it has no right to this seat. Rather, it was provided to Russia in a deal after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Ukraine could and should be recognized to fill the USSR seat rather than Russia. Wow. I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if I have an immediate answer as to why not, but it's an interesting thought. As I was reading the letter, I was like, well, who do they suggest would take their place? I don't know who that would go to, but Ukraine certainly could, and I don't know, but I mean, it's not like Ukraine stands as a, quasi superpower itself, and nothing would annoy or anger the Russians more at this point. But I don't know, like, what other successor state to the USSR could you consider? It's certainly, I imagine, the most developed. of the bunch, the most westernized, but that's not necessarily the goal of the UN or the UN Security Council. But there's nobody in the Asian orbit who presents similar credentials whom the Chinese would allow. I'm not certain that the Chinese would allow for Ukraine either. So, I mean, I don't think that they've consulted with the Chinese on this thing. India? Maybe, but I mean, how could you let India in but not Pakistan? I think that would cause more trouble than it resolves. Gosh, I don't know who else you would be able to put in that fifth seat. But anyway, that's not answered here. And I don't know what Steve Cohen would have to say about it. But now this gives us an opportunity to talk about the Helsinki Commission and what it is and why it's so weird and why do I know anything about it. And the only reason I really know anything about it was at one point, I don't know, I was doing something esoteric and dumb and waste of time, I'm sure, investigating all of the balance. I probably was looking at, this might stem back to, I don't know, 2006, 8, 10, somewhere around there. I don't know. Maybe one of the last times that the Republicans in the Senate were considering, or I guess the first round of their consideration of filibustering the organizing resolution at the beginning of a new Senate in protest of what they thought was an unfair partisan breakdown of seats on the various committees. And you may recall that story. And at one point they were saying they were going to filibuster it and that was not going to allow the committees to form. And I pondered what might happen if they were allowed to go ahead with that filibuster. And wouldn't it really be the case? My own theory was, well, 2/3 of the Senate remains in office and presumably their committee assignments remain effective. And if that's the case, then most of these committees, so long as they're filibustering a new organizing resolution, naming new members to them from among the 1/3 of the Senate that was beginning a new term and needed to be reassigned to committees, the other 2/3 were still serving, and it gave an overwhelming advantage among the members still serving to Democrats on most of the committees. And I combed through every single committee that there was in order to figure it out. And among the list of the full list of things listed as committees or things that were quasi committees that operated on the basis of membership from among the Senate, anyway, was the U.S. Helsinki Commission. And at which point I said, the hell's that? And learned minimum amount of information about it, enough to confuse me and cause me to remember it as a committee when really it's a commission, and it's comprised of a significant number of members of Congress, but also outside members as well. But I'm sure it conducts a lot of its business committee style. So here's the Wikipedia entry on it. The Helsinki Commission is sort of shorthand for it. It is, formally speaking, known as the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe. Perhaps you know it by that name. I don't know. But here's what they have to say about it in brief. The Commission, which is abbreviated CSCE, is also known as the U.S. Helsinki Commission, an independent U.S. government agency, in fact, not a committee, but created by Congress in 1975 to monitor and encourage compliance with the Helsinki Final Act and other Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe commitments. What was the Helsinki Final Act, also known as the Helsinki Accords or Helsinki Declaration? According to the Wikipedia pop-up when you hover over it, it is the document signed at the closing meeting of the third phase of the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe held in Helsinki, Finland between July 30th and August 1st, 1975, following, I guess this is longer than fits in the bubble here, following 2 years of negotiations known as the Helsinki process. all then existing European countries except Andorra, which now has terrible COVID problems, and pro-Chinese Albania, which may no longer be pro-Chinese, I don't know, as well as the United States and Canada. Altogether, 35 participating states signed the final act in an attempt to improve the détente between the East and the West. The Helsinki Accords, however, were not binding as they did not have treaty status that would have had to have been ratified by parliaments. Sometimes the term Helsinki Pacts was also used unofficially. So there you are. So what our implementation of that here in the United States was to have our own Helsinki Commission that they monitored and encouraged compliance with this final act and other OSCE commitments. It was initiated by House Representative Millicent Fenwick. Do you all remember Millicent Fenwick? She was an interesting character. And established in 1975 pursuant to Public Law 94-304 and is based at the Ford House Office Building. It's an annex office building, not among the three chief House office buildings, but a lot of committees and commissions and I don't know. Anyway, the Ford House office building is an annex slightly further away from the Capitol, but still in the Capitol Hill area, kind of a Siberia in terms of office space. So you would put things like the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe there, or maybe the Joint Committee on the Library and things like that, Joint Committee on Printing. They end up, this is the kind of people that end up in the Ford House office building. Anyway, Millicent Fenwick is an interesting character. If you want to read a little bit about her. New Jersey representative, that's how I remember her. Republican, like the old line. New Jersey Republican. As I recall, so, what was her background? I mean, she struck me as sort of the, socialite heiress type, but I think that just might have been her. I think she may have married into that. But that's the way she carried herself, and she was a very interesting person. And the name suggests socialite as well, right? Let's click on her bio just for the hell of it. Millicent Vernon Hammond Fenwick, American fashion editor, politician, and diplomat. How do you like that? 4-term Republican member of the United States House of Representatives from New Jersey, entered politics late in life and was renowned for her energy and colorful enthusiasm. Oh, everyone loves enthusiasm.
Enthusiasms.
She was regarded as a moderate progressive within her party and was outspoken in favor of civil rights and the women's movement. If I recall correctly, she smoked a pipe, or at least was rumored to be a pipe smoker. I don't know why that stuck with me, but I remember her. I would have been in junior high school, I think, at the time when she was running for Senate against Frank Lautenberg in his first campaign for Senate, and it was interesting. I think I got assigned to the Millicent Fenwick side in the debate in social studies at the time, too. Anyway, so it stuck with me, so I'm sure her family would be happy to know that people still remember Millicent Fenwick. And she's apparently responsible for sponsoring the enabling legislation for the Helsinki Committee. How about that? Well, anyway, I think I still have a Millicent Fenwick campaign pin upstairs somewhere, socked away in my collection. Maybe I can find that and take a picture of it and entertain you all with that. The commission, though, which is what we were talking about, consists of 9 members from the U.S. House of Representatives, 9 members from the United States Senate, so 18 of their total membership from Congress, and 1 member each from the Department of State, Defense, and Commerce. So it's really kind of like a joint committee with 3 extra members from governmental departments, executive branch departments. The positions of chairman and co-chairman are shared by the House and the Senate and rotate every 2 years when a new Congress convenes. So I guess we're currently in a Congress with a co-chairmanship held by the House. That's an interesting way of doing it. I thought that they meant there would be a co-chair, one from the House and one from the Senate. But they're both from the House, and in the next Congress, they'll both be from the Senate. And I guess for purposes of bipartisanship, since this isn't a congressional committee per se, there's a Republican and a Democrat co-chair from the House right now. And what a combination. Steve Cohen and Joe Uli Wilson. All right. Well, anyway, that's pretty interesting that Joe Wilson has anything in particular. But I guess, I don't know if you would say there's any serious power behind co-chairmanship of the Helsinki Commission. But it's something to do with your time. Anyway, the positions, though, rotate between the House and the Senate every 2 years when a new Congress convenes. A professional staff assists the commissioners in their work. The commission contributes to the formulation of U.S. policy toward the OSCE and the participating states and takes part in its execution, including through member and staff participation on official U.S. delegations to OSCE meetings and in certain OSCE bodies. Get to do some nice European travel, I guess. Members of the commission have regular contact with parliamentarians, that is to say, members of parliament in foreign countries, not the parliamentarians who tell them what they can and can't do, government officials, NGOs, and private individuals from other OSCE participating states. The commission convenes public hearings and briefings with expert witnesses on OSCE-related issues, public reports concerning implementation of OSCE commitments in participating states, publishes a periodic digest with up-to-date information on OSCE developments and commission activities, and organizes official delegations to participating states and OSCE meetings to address and assess democratic, economic, and human rights developments firsthand. Wow. In February of 2018, the CSCE convened in Washington, D.C., so no travel involved at all, to address the issue of Russian doping in international sport. Little did they know they were going to have much more on their hands with Russia. Oh, little did they know. It was 4 years since they had invaded and annexed Crimea, so I think they knew, actually. Central to the discussion was an exploration of the need to protect whistleblowers. The meeting included testimony from Jim Walden, attorney for Dr. Grigory Rodchenkov, the former head of Russia's anti-doping laboratory. Sounds like they really didn't have their eye exactly on the ball, but I guess to keep things low-key, they focused on the doping as opposed to the 4-year-old annexation of the Crimea. But okay. By the way, interested at all in who the members are? From the Senate, on the Democratic side, the majority, Ben Cardin of Maryland, Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire, Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, Dick Blumenthal of Connecticut, and Tina Smith of Minnesota, very heavily East Coast. Minority members, Roger Wicker of Mississippi, John Boozman of Arkansas, Marco Rubio of Florida, Tom Tillis of North Carolina. And let's see, from the House members, this is interesting. Oh, okay. Well, first, Alcee Hastings was co-chair until April 6th, 2021, and Steve Cohen took over for him afterwards. Of course, Alcee Hastings died, and so I guess in that respect, no longer eligible to serve as co-chair of the CSCE. I think they probably have a rule against that. Steve Cohen took his place. Gwen Moore of Wisconsin, Emmanuel Cleaver of Missouri, Mark Veazey of Texas. I don't know anything about Mark Veazey of Texas. Wow. Okay. And Ruben Gallego of Arizona. So it's always good to read these lists and see who's doing what. Over on the minority side, Joe Wilson of South Carolina, Robert Aderholt of Alabama, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, and Richard Hudson of North Carolina. I think also literally never heard of Richard Hudson either. By the way, the 3 executive branch representatives they all amazingly all have the same name. Remember, we have Department of Commerce, Department of Defense, Department of State, all represented by vacant. Just so you know. So, hey, get on the ball, Biden administration. We need representatives from the executive branch. So they really do function essentially as a joint committee at this point. They're not supposed to, but there's nobody representing the executive branch, as it happens. So, okay, just a bit of rules-based, procedural-based trivia and esoterica, finding out about the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe. They have their own page, which you'll find at csce.gov. and it's fancy, and it's got pictures, and, so there you go. So co-chairs, interesting. So on their page, they list the chairman as Senator Ben Cardin and co-chairman as Representative Steve Cohen, whereas over at the Wikipedia page, which normally you would assume would be less authoritative than the actual official page, they list, they do list Cardin as chair and Steve Cohen as co-chair. Why? What were we just reading that said things, the positions of chairman and co-chairman are shared by the House and Senate and rotate every 2 years? Where did we read about Joe Wilson being a co-chair? Was that in, was that in the article that was excerpted here? Well, at any rate, it's interesting. He wrote this letter calling for this stripping Russia of its seat in the UN Council. It is credited to Steve Cohen and Joe Wilson, and it says a co-chair and okay, I see now. I did read it through here. Representative Steve Cohen and Joe Wilson, a co-chair and the ranking member on the Helsinki Commission, respectively. Joe Wilson would be the ranking member. Steve Cohen, the co-chair. It's just a little bit confusing the way that's put. But okay. All right. Well, that straightens that out. I thought, for whatever reason, for bipartisan purposes, because it wasn't really a congressional committee, that they structured it weirdly and differently. But no, it's just majority minority, and the other co-chair besides Steve Cohen is Ben Cardin. All right. Glad we straightened that out. I mentioned to you also since we're just mulling about in the weeds of things, show weeds, the meta of Kagro in the Morning, I want to pat myself on the back, congratulate myself by reading Bruce McFarlane's tweet from yesterday saying, so proud of me, Kagro X, on KITM, pronouncing Dominica correctly this morning. Of course, he heard it in the afternoon via podcast, but we discussed it yesterday. I forget what the hell was going on there. I know I made mention of Paolo Zampoli, but only because Dominica came up. But I already forget while we were talking about it. But it's, one of a few places that I remember being admonished about the pronunciation of, but I actually remember the pronunciation. I always remember the admonishment, but rarely the actual pronunciation. And it joins Willamette University as the only other place that I actually remember. And somebody picked up on that yesterday as well and saying, it's because they have the cool rhyme of it's Willamette, damn it, which does help a tremendous amount in remembering how to pronounce that thing. So I needed a rhyme for Dominica, and the only thing I can think of is it's Dominica, you crazy freaka, because nothing rhymes with Dominica. But anyway, so you could try that one and see if it reminds you. It may be the only one that sticks with you. All right, let's see. What else do we want to fit in here? The whole point of that thing, though, was to bring up, there's actually people, of some significance making petitions to who? I don't know. I guess to the State Department that they should move to have the UN ambassador, United States UN ambassador, move somewhere to say, hey, maybe we should strip Russia of its seat on the UN Security Council. I don't think they'll ever bring it up. I mean, I think it's a point well taken, but not something that they want to take with them to the Security Council and just cause anger, resentment, and conflict with at the UN. It's not what you want to try to do. So I don't know that it's going anywhere. All right, let's see. Other things to share with you. Well, let's see. Why not something like this, which seems fun and important. Let me take a look at some of the other things that are hiding in here. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. But no, we'll share this one with you. The New York Times piece from Norm Eisen, I think, among the authors. Norm Eisen, Danielle Bryan, and E. Danya Perry. Hope I've got those names pronounced correctly. But an opinion piece from the 14th not that long ago. The January 6th hearings are over. These three things must happen now. I'd be interested in seeing what Norm Eisen, among others, thinks ought to happen next. Eisen and Perry, it notes here underneath the byline, are the authors of Trump on Trial, a Brookings Institution report on the January 6th committee. Ms. Bryan is the executive director of the Project on Government Oversight, and they say this. On Thursday, in what was probably its final public hearing before the election, the House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol revealed new details about former President Donald Trump. Those details included Secret Service records documenting his determination to join a mob he knew was armed and headed for violence. The hearings have provided an indispensable record of an attempted coup that failed, but that, as Representative Liz Cheney pointed out, threatens to recur. As the committee waits for the unlikely testimony of Mr. Trump, the torch now passes to other actors who hold the power to achieve accountability for the January 6th attack on the Capitol and to prevent another one from happening. This task fits into three key areas. First, potential disqualification. The added proof of Mr. Trump's involvement in the events of January 6th renews the question of whether elections officials and courts can disqualify him from holding public office under the Constitution. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment provides for the disqualification from office of any person who has, quote, engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or who has, quote, given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. The prospect of Mr. Trump being disqualified may sound unlikely, but it is not fanciful. A New Mexico County commissioner who participated in the January 6th insurrection was recently removed on just this basis. I don't know if it translates, but okay. On the question of whether Mr. Trump engaged in insurrection, the evidence presented throughout the hearing suggests that he knew the mob was armed when he riled them up on January 6th, wanted the magnetometers, or metal detectors, to be taken down, expressed a wish to join the mob at the Capitol, and then cheered the insurrectionists on while watching the violence on television. It also includes evidence referenced on Thursday that he singled out Vice President Mike Pence in a tweet after knowing of the violence underway. It is also fair to ask whether Mr. Trump's actions provided aid and comfort to insurrectionists. That prospect is reinforced by his failure to act for 187 minutes despite pleas from advisors while the mob ran rampant. Indeed, he offered repeated words of support that day to the mob, tweeting when the mob finally began dispersing, these are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from the great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. For disqualification, voters would start the process by filing petitions to keep Mr. Trump off the ballot. I'd file that, I guess. Elected officials and courts would then act on them. Disqualification under Section 3 involves several legal and factual challenges. For example, some say it would be better or even necessary to have enabling legislation passed by Congress. That ain't happening. Joan can tell you about how little time they have for something like that. We strongly disagree, though, because both because that's not what the Constitution says, and because courts have acted without such legislation over a period of more than 150 years. The committee should brush aside any legal misconceptions in its final report. In its report, the committee also should highlight the proof supporting Mr. Trump's disqualification, scouring its now vast archive of over 1,000 interviews and millions of pages of documents and data to lay out the evidence about Mr. Trump and anyone else who may face consequences under the 14th Amendment, including members of Congress. Next up, a road map. The report could be modeled after the Watergate roadmap. That document laid out in painstaking detail the evidence of wrongdoing that an investigative body, a grand jury, had collected. It consisted of an inventory listing the evidence and then attached pieces of proof, whether it was a document, witness transcript, or something else. In that case, a grand jury was sending evidence to the House. In this case, it is the House that would be making evidence available to others, but the principle is the same. The committee should compile all the relevant evidence upon which 14th Amendment decision makers can rely. A similar roadmap may also be helpful to federal and state prosecutors. A formal criminal referral is less essential than laying out the relevant evidence for federal prosecutors to draw upon in their various investigations, and for local ones like Fannie Willis, the district attorney for Fulton County, Georgia. Very true. The committee's evidence on Thursday suggesting potential obstruction of justice by members of the Secret Service and the White House staff will also be in the hands of federal prosecutors to resolve. In one of the more notable moments of the hearing, Representative Adam Schiff stated that evidence strongly suggested, quote, certain White House and Secret Service witnesses, unquote, had falsely testified that they were not aware of the risk of violence. There's a bit more, of course, to discuss in this, but our next segment, we hope to be joined by Joan McCarter, and she can tell you how likely any of this is. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is with us. Coffee being poured, or already poured as we speak. She figured she was doing us a favor by pouring it off the air, but I suggest that everybody wants to hear the coffee being poured, but it's all right. One way or the other, I think we'll wrap it up with, we're certainly done with the Helsinki Commission, because neither of us know anything really about that, except that it exists, which is interesting enough. Maybe we didn't even know that for sure. But at any rate, an interesting mission they have in mind. And we'll set aside also, unless you want to return to it, by all means, we're free to do that, the opinion piece about from the Times the other day. What should the January 6th committee be looking to do with their wrap-up work now that they've had their last hearing, and it's unlikely they'll ever actually get a chance to get testimony from Trump? He'll just be busy the rest of their for the balance of the 117th Congress, ignoring his subpoena, if they even issue that. I mean, I guess the committee made its recommendation. Did they have a vote on the House floor on the subpoena yet? I don't think so.
No, because they're in recess.
Yes. Okay. So, they may get around to that. They may not. I don't know. They might not think that that's super important, or they might think, well, symbolically we have to do it. But he's not answering the subpoena anyway, so it doesn't matter for that purpose. So anyway, I'd be interested. Maybe we'll return to it later on in the week to see what else they recommend. But I always love...
The subpoena's not out yet.
No?
Right?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't think they've actually written it.
Okay. Well, then I guess not. I know they had a vote.
There's not really any big immediate deadline for them. They're not coming back until November 14th.
Okay. I didn't watch the hearing closely enough to... I know there was a vote, but all they voted on was, maybe we should write one? Okay. I mean, that seems...
Well, it could be written. It's just it hasn't been released yet.
Okay, so
yeah,
I can imagine the staff might have written and circulated one. They gave their assent to the idea of, I guess, issuing one, and I don't know. I suppose. Well, actually, they'll vote on the subpoena, and the subpoena doesn't have to be, I don't think, discussed on the House floor. But if he ignores it and they want to have a contempt vote, that will have to happen on the House floor. I think the committee might be able to issue their own subpoenas.
The full House does not have to. No, the whole House has to vote on the subpoena.
Do they? Okay. I'm not certain that they do.
They have in the past.
Okay. Well, then that would probably be it. I think you can authorize committees differently. on what they can do to issue their subpoenas. But at any rate,
know this, shouldn't I? Well, anyway,
we probably should at this point. But since he's not going to
happen until after the election anyway, regardless of how it happens.
And he won't be complying with it anyway, and
he won't comply with
understood. But okay, certainly the contempt vote has to happen on the House floor, and I just don't remember. It depends on the authorizing resolution for a committee what the rules are going to be, and. It won't matter. But okay. Now I feel like I have to sort that out at some point. But instead, we'll sort out some other things. And not the Helsinki Commission either. Because we don't know anything about that. But what we do know is, I don't know. What do we know? You tell me. It sounded authoritative. I thought I was going somewhere.
We know that more than 1 million adults with diabetes are forced to ration their life-saving health care.
That is the thing
cost
we
of
know.
Insulin.
Right.
We know that this morning.
We do, thanks to what you've just written up.
A report in the Annals of Medicine. Data from the 2021 National Health Survey.
Okay.
They conducted. And 1.3 million Americans have skipped doses, delayed buying, or otherwise rationed doses by, cutting down the amount that they take.
Right. And so been a big issue for a long time. And
that's
now
16.5% of adults with diabetes. And that's a lot of people.
It is.
Who can't afford the, hundreds of dollars, in some cases, a month. This is kind of important right this moment because, of course, we have an election and because Democrats single-handedly managed to help the 11% they found of seniors and disabled people on Medicare who ration insulin to afford it.
Right,
they passed in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay.
All of these acronyms in my head. I try to remember which is which. The Inflation Reduction Act included a $35 per month cap on insulin costs for people on Medicare.
Okay, right. And it was a narrow slice.
It was going to be a $35 cap on insulin for everybody with health insurance, but Republicans didn't let that happen.
Right, because I don't know what, they hate people with diabetes, I guess. I don't know.
Anybody who's actually been born.
Yeah.
They care about you and your health until you emerge from the womb. Once you're born, you're on your own.
Well, it's a crapshoot. Everyone should pull themselves up by their own healthcare bootstraps, I guess.
There are 3 Republicans. In fact, 7 Republicans did say, it would be nice to help people with diabetes save their own lives.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That was nice of them. Do they have diabetes by any chance?
It's possible.
I
don't think so, but it's possible.
Just want to ask.
So it would have only taken
do.
3 Republicans to join with them and get the 60 votes to get that provision kept in the budget reconciliation bill. The overall bill, because it was budget reconciliation, passed with just Democratic votes.
Yeah.
But any changes to it, based on what the parliamentarian ruled, thank you, parliamentarian, required 60 votes. The parliamentarian said, no, we can do this for people on Medicare, but we can't do it for everybody with health insurance. So, no, you have to take that one out.
I see.
Democrats objected, said, let's keep it in. Republicans said, nope. Yeah. Except for the 47. Okay, or the 7, rather.
Yeah.
So, Marco Rubio, Ron Johnson, Tim Scott, all running for re-election this year. All, I'm sure, representing people who have diabetes and who can't afford to take their medicine.
Right. Every state will have that.
They could have done it. They could have said, okay, we'll help these people. They chose not to.
Yeah, and they engineered it so that, well, 3 of you who are running for re-election who don't want to be in trouble with the vast number of voters in your states who would have been helped by this but who are now getting screwed, you can do it. But let's just make sure that as a whole, it doesn't happen. So you can just mouth the words.
It was 7 others.
Oh.
Those 3.
Oh, okay.
They
I got it
could have
backwards.
made the difference.
Oh, I see.
They could have done it.
I was thinking, well, that's odd, but okay. They only had 3 that were in that much, in a close enough race to worry about it. Okay, no, 7 makes more sense. Yes. Okay, you were saying, okay, I have it backwards.
And, Murkowski was one of them. I don't think
that does make sense.
She was the only one who was up this cycle.
Huh.
Who voted with Democrats.
Well, that is unusual. I would have thought the exact opposite had happened. And although, it would take a lot of convincing normally to tell me, yeah, Marco Rubio did a decent thing. And Johnson, too. I was like, well, how did he figure that out? Tim Scott, I don't know. I could see him going the other way in the right circumstances. But, Ron Johnson seems usually determined to shoot himself in the foot. And
yes.
it turns out that he did. So
he did.
Well,
and then
now I understand.
Well, Johnson's excuse, because he immediately got backlash, was that in reality, this is a quote, the Dems wanted to break Senate rules to pass insulin pricing cap instead of going through regular order.
Why?
They put this in a bill it wasn't allowed in, all for show. So Ron Johnson wasn't voting against people with diabetes. Ron Johnson was voting against the Democrats who were breaking the rules.
Breaking the rules by asking for a waiver.
Yes.
Oh, so could we please have your permission?
Breaking rules by,
just breaking them.
Offering a slate of fake electors.
Right.
And an electoral college count to pick the president.
Right. Or beating up police officers and trying to take over the floor. Those things are breaking the rules. The rules say you can ask for a waiver. So they asked for a waiver. And it requires the permission of 10 Republicans to go along. And Ron Johnson wouldn't give that permission because they were asking too politely, I guess. They should have punched somebody in the face and maybe smeared feces on the wall. And that would have convinced them.
Yeah. I'd really, really like to help all of you people who can't afford your life-saving medicine. I just can't because it's against this very arcane rule of procedure.
That's a pretty lame excuse always.
The greatest deliberative body in the world. Yeah.
I mean, we asked according to the rules. Can we waive it? I don't know. It looks like you're breaking the rules to me. No, we're following the rules. I've asked you for a waiver. Can we have it? It's now just a personal choice for you. It's not breaking the rules. It's following the rules. The rule says we can ask for a waiver and then ask for your vote. What do you say? No. Oh, no, it's breaking the rules. Okay. I wonder what, well, that does make a lot more sense because, of course, 3 people crossing over, or they had a lot more room to give away free votes. 7 is the number 9 is the number they could have given away. I guess. So 2 of those 3, Ron Johnson, obviously too stupid to figure out what's going on. Marco Rubio and Tim Scott could have said, yes, that's true, and still not have made Mitch McConnell angry in the end. And still wouldn't do it.
And, maybe done something to make it look like they gave a damn.
Yeah.
But no.
All right.
Marco has his Bible verses, so he's okay on that front.
So. I just don't know what's distracting Tim Scott because there's plenty of people in all those states, but that would have that problem more, I'm sure, in Florida even than South Carolina. But South Carolina's got a pretty significant issue with that. And, of course, with minority populations as well. And Tim Scott, maybe that would be of interest. Maybe a relative who suffers from diabetes who would have enjoyed being able to afford his medication. But I guess he just wasn't taking their calls.
I guess not.
And Ron Johnson doesn't know how to work a phone.
It's also a factor in the Senate race in Georgia, of course.
Yes. Okay.
Raphael Warnock has spent a lot of time working on trying to get a standalone insulin cap bill passed.
Which wouldn't break any rules, as far as I can tell.
Which wouldn't break any rules. One that Ron Johnson could vote for if he gave a damn.
Yeah. We'll see whether he does.
But we didn't get it. We got it for people with Medicare, but not for everybody else. So that came up in the debate with he and Herschel Walker.
Okay. And he said something about trees, and that was it.
No, he said it's
a different
food.
one. It's
You got to eat right, Herschel Walker said.
Oh, okay. I was like, I'm
I
afraid
know
he said
many
insulin
people
was food.
that's on insulin.
Oh.
And here he probably has a medical license, an honorary medical license to say this. Unless you're eating right, insulin is doing you no good. Mm-hmm. So you have to get food prices down, and you got to get gas down so you can go get insulin.
All right. I mean, that may have something to do with things. People do drive in their cars to get their medicine.
They do.
That happens. He's not wrong. He's not really got his finger on the issue necessarily, but okay. And it's not as bad as I thought. I thought he was saying it. You said that's food. Like that insulin is food. Insulin is not food. What are you talking about?
You got to eat right.
Yes. Well, you should. There you go. He understands the issue thoroughly. You do have to eat right. And I mean, that would help you, but in the meantime, insulin will keep you alive.
Diabetic, it really doesn't have a whole lot.
That has nothing to do with it. Yeah. If you're a type 2 diabetic, eating right will help you, and insulin will keep you alive so that you continue to eat right. That would be nice, but if you're dead, there's just not a lot you can do about your diet. So, we could always hope that why didn't everybody just play football their whole lives and have professional trainers? Why not? I don't know. It does sometimes happens the other way. And then it's a question of, can you help while they try to help themselves? Because people who are taking their insulin, they're trying to help themselves, help them along. It's medicine. What's wrong with that? Nothing, except he needs to be able to say no to things because he read in the script that Republicans say no to this thing, and I have to answer. Well, it had
to be about inflation and gas prices.
I guess, because that's the
he remembered it has to come back to inflation and gas prices. Yeah. So, like he's jamming pieces of 5 different puzzles together.
Yeah. That's the ammunition he has. And he certainly, if he understood issues, of course, he could say, I don't have any obligation to uphold the votes of other Republicans in the Senate and what they've done with them. And there's room for more Republican votes anyway. I think people should get a break on their insulin. I'll study the issue. I'll see whether that price is right for everybody else. Maybe 45 is a better number. I don't know. But that would never occur to him to say.
In 2018, the average price that was paid in 32 other OECD countries was $8.81.
That's low.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take it to the Helsinki Commission.
Yes, the $35 cap is great in the United States, but it's still several times more than what the rest of the world has to pay.
Who's making all that insulin for so cheap? It's impossible. The market would say.
It costs, even with all of the formulations that they've made that are better, and there have been, great advances in insulin, it still costs less than $10 per unit to produce.
So 35 seems like a great bargain for both. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously that's not going to happen, although maybe next time. Maybe we, win some more seats. And
maybe we win some more seats. We really, really, really have to win some more seats.
That would be great.
We also have to win the House.
True.
Because as of this morning, or maybe it was yesterday afternoon, I don't know when he did the interview, Kevin McCarthy, who wants to be Speaker of the House, has confirmed reports that first came up in Bloomberg Government last week that, yes, Republicans are planning on holding the debt ceiling hostage to get Social Security and Medicare cuts.
Oh. So now they're just open with it?
Out there saying it out loud. This is what we're going to do. We're going to put the global economy in danger. We are going to potentially wreck the whole global financial system by saying the United States will go into default unless we can make old people eat cat food.
I guess. And they don't even really care about that part of it. I assume they think it's a good play because then they'll say, look what Joe Biden did at that point.
Presumably.
You know, he wrecked the economy, and like this economy will fix itself in a couple of years. I mean, if you default on the debt, you know, even electing a Republican president and a Republican Congress doesn't change anything in 2 years, and then eventually it will be your problem. But I guess he doesn't care about that. Maybe he'll retire at that point. But they just don't think about anything and the long-term consequences of those issues. But
and thank you, Mitch McConnell, for making this a thing.
I guess so. Yeah.
He was the one who decided in 2011 that, we could say we could take the debt ceiling hostage. We're not going to shoot the hostage.
Right. And he failed.
You know, we wouldn't even dream of that. But sure, it's a hostage worth taking.
Yeah.
I think was the exact quote from McConnell back then, if I remember. He used the word hostage.
Well, he had a different
it's a hostage worth ransoming.
Oh, well, yeah.
He had the ransom in there, too. But, yeah, and, you know, Mitch McConnell is a nihilist, but he's not as much of a nihilist, and he knew that it wasn't going to happen, and he knew he could get concessions. Thank you, Joe Biden, for giving him those concessions. McConnell wouldn't have gone there. He wouldn't have allowed it to happen. I always saw that last year when we were reaching the debt ceiling limit, and he actually said, well, okay, this one time we can do it without 60 votes.
Right. He seems fairly well aware. It's not he's doing this senselessly. He knows that it's something. He
knows the consequences. He knows how dangerous it is.
Yeah. It's just he's now got ranks filled with people who don't.
Idiot House Republicans who don't get how dangerous it is, don't care how dangerous it is, like to blow things up.
Yes.
He didn't think about what was happening when he was handing them this hand grenade.
Yeah, well, he doesn't think about the House that much. It's usually not his responsibility. But yeah, this leaked over into the House. And of course, now he's could be also handed a Senate conference filled with some of the same dummies.
Yeah.
Or worse, people who, really don't have any idea about anything and just have no business being anywhere in Congress, much less on the Senate side of it, where they can really blow things up, and whose concept of being a good leader is never compromising about anything, even if you don't really know what's going on. So,
and they'll be the majority.
Yeah. Well, they certainly...
they want to be the majority.
That's the danger.
They control Kevin McCarthy. They might not be the actual majority of members of the Republican caucus in the House, but they're the ones who pull all of the strings.
Yeah.
Because McCarthy is just phenomenally weak.
Yep. Well, they all know how to take hostages now, and they take the worst possible ones, and they just don't believe in long-term bad consequences if it helps them in the short term. I don't think they think that there are such things. I guess
I don't know what they think.
I don't know. It's hard to tell.
You don't have borrowing capability. You can't pay Social Security. You can't pay Medicare. You can't pay the Army, Navy, Marines.
Yeah, right.
You're not paying for your troops. You're not paying for veterans care. You're not paying anything.
Yeah.
You're not paying your foreign debt, which is throwing all of those governments to which you owe money into crisis because they can't then pay for their stuff.
Yeah. So, then they'll take it out on you because they don't have any sympathy for you, especially, what do you do when China, which holds a significant amount of foreign debt from the United States, there's any number of ways that they might retaliate, and I don't even have to hint at any that are military. They won't make any sense. They won't get you any money, but they could put all sorts of economic pressure on you. But as long as we we've just gotten through all these supply chain issues. I wonder if we'll have any more of them if the Chinese command economy decides, hey, we're getting screwed by the United States here. Let's screw back. I'm sure nothing of consequence would happen.
We'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Well,
the thing is, even the threat of this has caused the cost of borrowing, both in 2013 and in 2011. It raised the cost of borrowing for everybody.
Yes, okay, I see.
So even threatening to default on the debt ceiling, even though you don't do it, but you threaten to do it, has economic consequences, bad ones.
Isn't there any way we could lie about the value of our assets and get better rates?
We need Donald Trump's appraisers.
Now we see why we need a businessman in the White House. He needs to lie to the entire world about the value of our assets. Well, that won't work, obviously, and it hasn't really worked out very well for him either. Although so far it's fine. He's not in jail and he's sitting on a pile of money when he shouldn't be. But, how you do it for the United States, I don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
All right. Well, nothing like putting the foreign debt in their hands.
And, it's kind of a big deal. And also, debt ceiling, bad enough. But also, he's saying, unless you give us these things on Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and the rest of the safety net programs, things like raising the eligibility age, putting on means testing, forcing people who are getting Medicaid and food stamps to work or proof that they're working.
Right.
Even though we know that, 75% of the people who live in households with these programs actually are working.
Yes.
They're already doing it. You're just making it harder for them to do their jobs and fill out all of the paperwork and show up at the offices where they have to prove that they're working in order to keep getting the help.
Yeah. How can I show up at the office to prove I'm working if I'm working?
Right.
I don't know. Well, then you lose your eligibility.
Yeah, that's what they want to do. They want to, and they're just out there saying it out loud. It's remarkable.
Yes.
How sure Republicans are that they can, I guess, steal this election and get the majorities, because they're out there saying what they're going to do. They're not just touching the third rail; they're hanging on to it with both hands.
Yeah. Don't you guys want to see something exciting? It's like the campaign plan. You guys want to see a dead body? Like, there's no real use for this, but it's exciting, titillating. We're going to wreck stuff once again.
Ron Johnson's idea. Let's vote on it every year. Let's make it not an entitlement program, Social Security, which is being paid into, that lockbox.
Right.
Our money we're putting away for our futures in a lockbox. Take that away. Make it a regular spending program that we have to authorize every single year.
So that each
That's
year
what Ron Johnson wants to
you'll
do.
pay in right out of your paycheck, and increasingly people have worried that Social Security won't be there for them for the future. But now every year you'll have to have that panic attack. All the money that you paid out, I don't know, we might spend it on this, we might spend it on something else, we might not spend it at all, we might send it to China, we might spend it on offices for the Helsinki Commission. I don't know what might happen.
So really what's going to happen is we have to get rid of payroll taxes because, people can't afford them. So payroll taxes out the window, Social Security fund out the window. Everybody has to, if they have any pennies left over, invest them with Wall Street.
Yes, right. Exactly the place you want them to be. And can't wait to invest alongside people who rushed to buy into Truth Media or Truth Social or whatever, which now looks to be collapsing as well. Nothing like putting the federal debt and the debt limit in the hands of people who are certain that there are litter boxes in our schools, and we have to, Jewish space lasers and cat boxes plus the federal deficit.
Speaking of Trump and money, did you see yesterday that his big PAC that's supposed to be helping get Republicans elected this year spent more than half of its money on buying up Jared Kushner's books copies of Kushner's book.
Oh, no, I didn't see that was specifically what they had spent their money on. But okay. That's certainly a long-standing Republican practice and well in keeping with the thing. But usually they do that for people who are then themselves running for office, and I don't think Jared has plans for that. That's just simply give money to my daughter's husband.
Pretty much.
What? They can just do nothing with it. Okay. Wow. Okay. That's going to change nothing in terms of his donors' viewpoint, but another scandal added to the pile. I hadn't seen that one. Okay.
I'll share a link with you.
Thank you. Fun. I appreciate that, and we'll share that around, and anyone who hasn't seen that should. But, wow, what a shocker. I did see something about they were burning 90% of their money on further fundraising, that they're...
Yes.
But even worse, once the other 10% goes to Jared Kushner.
Jared Kushner.
Well, that's amazing. But not surprising, I suppose. Thanks, Joan. That's a new one.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, we'll check out for today and check in again perhaps next week.
Yep.
Yes?
In the meantime, go do your GOTV.
Yeah.
Cough up a few bucks where you can. Maybe not to Val Demings, but,
right.
Well,
okay. She's asking enough. That's for sure.
She's asking enough.
Okay, so perhaps you can. Thanks, Joan. Let's check in with you next week.
From networksradio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
That's right, you have been. And now you've been listening to Joan. And I'm sure that was a lot better than listening to me for the first 3/4 of the show. Time now to listen to Justice Putnam with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next. Looks at the top of the list today. Arizona's Kari Lake, just one of hundreds of Republican election deniers on the ballot this fall. She's in the crosshairs next.